What up, fellow nerds? I'm back, and this time with a Razer Viper V3 Pro review. I know I'm a few days late, but I promise it's going to be worth it. So let's get down to business. Quick spec overview. This thing has a 52840 MCU, and as far as the sensor goes, I'm not entirely sure. It could be a 3970, or it could be a 3950 HS from PixArt. I opened this up, and unfortunately, the chip itself doesn't tell you what it is, unlike the V2 Pro. But we do know that it has Razer or Razer optical switches. And as far as the build quality goes, let's just touch on that now. This thing, there's not really much to say. This thing is built completely solid, no holes in it like other mice. As far as flex or creaking, there's none present. I can squeeze on the sides. I don't get anything at all from any direction, whether it's the sides, the bottom, the top, whatever. Thing is completely solid and built really well at 55 grams. Now let's get down to the buttons. So these buttons are screwed into the top of the shell. So they're never going to move left and right. They're going to basically stay where they are. So it's a good design decision that Razer made as far as mitigating button wobble with this mouse. The side buttons themselves, they also have very little pre-travel. There's a little bit there, but not much at all. As far as post-travel, I can't really feel any at all. I know some people have said that these buttons are mushy. No, that's not the case at all. They're not mushy whatsoever. They feel good. They're very tactile and spammable, and yeah, they're not mushy at all. Same with the M1 and M2 buttons. You know, if I bring them up here, you can see they're a little bit concave towards the front right here. They kind of concave in. That's kind of similar to, I want to say, the Sora. And if you look at the Sora, they call them the comfort grooves, but they're pretty much the same idea. They're concave. Same thing with the Tiger. You know, the Tiger is probably the closest thing to this shape-wise because, you know, Tiger copied, Final Mouse copied Razer, and then BeastX copied these guys. So everybody's copying each other. And now these guys copied Logitech. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. So the buttons are similar. They've got that, you know, that flare, that concave design to them. But yeah, these the mouse itself, I believe it's a little bit longer than the Superlight 2, probably by like a millimeter or so. But you're not going to really notice it when you're handling the mouse. I mean, they both feel pretty much similar in size. The only thing I will say is that the hump on the Superlight 2 is a little bit taller than the Viper. So when you're holding these two, you can definitely feel, especially if you're palming it like this, you can feel the hump right here in the middle of your hand. Whereas this one, it's less pronounced, it's more in the knuckles. With both of these, they're very similar. But the difference is, if you look at the two mice right now, is this thing on the sides is more tapered in compared to the Superlight 2. And a result, at least in my opinion, I'm able to grip this mouse better for claw grip. And this gives me better control in game, whether I'm flicking or just doing random, you know, tracking with this. So tracking or flicking, I feel like I do a lot better than I do with the Superlight because of the shape. And for me, you know, as you've seen my previous videos, the Superlight 2 is a pinnacle of shape. I mean, it's a potato shape, but I thought it was really the pinnacle of design. I mean, that's why so many pros like this thing. And I think Razer recognized that fact, and they thought, you know what, why don't we just do the same thing that Logitech did, give us a hump there, but a little bit shorter. But hey, why don't we improve on what we already had and add tapered sides in? You know what is brilliant because it works and it feels fucking fantastic. Now, as far as the coating goes, the coating for the Superlight 2 is a slippery one, and I believe the black one for the Viper V3 is similar to the coating of the Superlight 2, whereas it's not very sticky. Let me give you a quick demonstration of how good the grip is and how good the coating is on this mouse. I'm not squeezing my fingers at all right now. This thing is literally sticking to my fingers. That's how good the coating on this thing is. I don't know what Razer did or what kind of coating they came up with, but damn, this thing is good. It feels good too. It's like a rubbery coating, and when you put your hands on it, it just feels damn nice. One thing I will say is that, look, it's not much of a fingerprint magnet either. I mean, you can see a little bit of fingerprints developing on there, but you wipe it down and it's gone. So yeah, that's a really awesome coating. Probably the best one I've ever used so far. Unlike the Sora. I would say feel-wise, the Sora is probably the closest to this feeling-wise, but that's where the similarities stop, because this thing is it's an oil magnet, just like I said in the review. This thing is not. Now, I don't know how the black one is. I don't have it, but I know the white one, at least, is not a fingerprint magnet. I mean, you see a little bit of oils and whatnot, but it's not a big deal. You don't really see it too much like the black version of Sora V2. I don't know about the black version of this one, though. Now, let's talk about the scroll wheel. This thing feels extremely good. It's rubber, and you can feel every single step that you take when you're moving it up or down. So, for example, if you're playing any kind of game, say Fortnite or whatever, that might depend on, you know, the wheel spam, and you need it to be accurate, this thing will give you all the accuracy that you need. It feels extremely good. It's very granular. Clicking it It doesn't take too much tactile force. I think it's the right amount of force for a middle mouse button. Now compared to the Superlight 2, I'd say the Superlight 2 takes more force, and the scroll wheel compared to the Razer just doesn't measure up. It's not as granular. You lose steps in between, I think, with the Superlight 2 scroll wheel, and it just doesn't feel as good as the Razer one does. The Razer one feels leagues better than Superlight 2. So yeah, another win for Razer compared to Logitech. This thing feels like ass in comparison to the Razer. I mean, the Razer scroll wheel just fucking blows the Final Mouse Tiger scroll wheel away. This thing, like I said in the review, just feels cheap. You know, like the rest of the mouse. I mean, okay, I'm taking that back. The rest of the mouse feels decent, but yeah, compared to this, yeah, the Final Mouse feels cheap, and it probably, and it should, you know, at 40 grams. But yeah, wireless performance, I haven't gotten to that yet. So if you look at your screen, you can see the wireless performance at 1K. There's no real delayed pulls there, so pretty much there's no problems as far as I can see. I would say you're not going to have any issues with this as long as you don't have too much interference. I did notice one thing pertaining to wireless performance is that if I had all my mice hooked up and all the receivers active, when I was doing wireless testing for this mouse, I noticed that there was some interference being picked up. But once I disconnected everything, then I redid the test again, that interference that I had in my graphs disappeared. So be mindful of that if you have multiple mice, that this thing, at least the receiver, is prone to interference. So just make sure you're able to separate those to not run into the same problems that I did. All right, well, I got some good news for you guys. So it took me a couple days, but I was able to get some click latency numbers for this thing. And I will say Razer did not make it easy. All right, let's get started. So the Viper V3 Pro at 8K has a pretty strong showing with 0.394 millisecond click latency. At 4K, it's 0.605 milliseconds. And at 1K, it's 0.671 milliseconds. And at 2K, it's 0.704 milliseconds. Now, the only doubt that I have possibly with these numbers is the 1K one. I ran that thing about 4 times, and I was getting variances between 0.671 milliseconds to, I want to say, 0.9 milliseconds. So, you know, there was a variance there in my numbers. So I'm not entirely sure what was going on. But 2 runs were within like 0.671 to 0.7 ballpark number. The 3rd run was slightly higher, and the 4th one was even higher at 0.9. I stuck with the lowest one, which is 0.671. So take 1K with a slight grain of salt. It could be slower or faster than 2K. Not 100% sure about that, but the 2K numbers, the 4K numbers, and the 8K numbers are very solid. Now moving on to motion latency. This thing is basically a wash with the Lamzoot Landis 4K, which is a control for my motion latency tests. It's slightly faster at minus 0.04 milliseconds, but and it's slightly slower than the BSEX medium. And then the Tiger is a little bit faster at minus 0.5, and the Superlight 2 is even faster at minus 0.7. Between all those, you're not going to notice one bit of difference in motion delay. This is purely academic. I want to emphasize that so you guys don't get caught up in the numbers. Now for the next part of the review, I do want to talk about gaming performance. Now, as you guys are aware, the Final Mouse ULX Tiger was my main. I say it was because ever since this thing came out, despite it being 55 grams, it is now my new main. And the reason is, yeah, it may weigh more, but honestly, at this size, it's really trivial. What I do like about this mouse is that it's built better. The coating is leagues and miles better than any mouse on the market. And it just contours and fits my hand so goddamn well. And when I'm playing games, I'm able to flick, I'm able to track, I'm able to do everything just as well as I am with this mouse or the BSEX or the Superlight 2 or anything else. You know what? It's pretty much a wash, if I'm being honest. No mouse is going to turn you into Shroud. But what they will do is they'll give you comfort and just feeling. And like I said, shape is king. I've always said this since my Superlight 2 review. Shape is king. Wireless performance, click latency, motion latency, whatever. It's all well and good. But at the end of the day, what's going to make you or break you is shape. You know, if the mouse is uncomfortable, you're going to have wrist pains. You're going to have, you're going to get tired. Fatigue's going to set in. And you're not going to do as well. So yeah, weight matters as well. But, none of us are weak-wristed men, right? So, weight at 55 grams is nothing. 45 or 40 grams, okay, this is nice. But again, it's not a make or break deal for me. For me, this is my favorite mouse on the market right now. For now, for me, it's a GOAT. The best mouse on the market for 2024. We'll see what the BSEX Max has to say about this, though, because BSEX Max has been on order for me. And I have the Fabulous Beast medium size as well on order. And yeah, the medium one's getting here next week. BSEX Max is supposed to get here, I don't know, 35, 40 days, whatever WL Mouse said. So until then, this is probably my my favorite mouse on the market. And who knows if the BSX Max will even overtake this, because it may be lighter than this, but it does have holes and it has those slits on the side. I've mentioned the BSX review that I do like the slits, but I'm not really sure how the Max is going to feel. It might have bigger slits and I might not like them. Who knows? And I might not like the shape as much as this thing or the coating. So we'll see. But for now, in my opinion, this is probably the best mouse on the market. All right, so I'm going to quickly talk about the software. I think everybody on the market by now is familiar with Synapse. So there's a few new features with this mouse that Razer added. So we'll briefly touch on those. So when you open up Synapse, you have a choice between your different Razer peripherals. I've got the keyboard and I've got the mouse. Click on the mouse. You can reassign buttons here, and there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do to them. So if you click on, say, like the side button, mouse 5, you can add different mouse functions, macros, switch profiles, multimedia keys, whatever you want to do, whatever floats your boat. But then moving on to performance, there's 5 different stages for sensitivities. It goes all the way up to 35,000 dpi. And a new feature for this is sensitivity matcher. So for example, I was using a Logitech mouse before this. If I was, which I wasn't, but if I was, then this thing, now you can calibrate these to where you can approximate the DPI to this one. So now when you switch over to Razer from Logitech, the feeling doesn't change. The distance over time doesn't change. It remains the same. And yeah, it's good for muscle memory. The next thing is pulling rate. Now, thanks to 8K, they include a 8K dongle with the mouse. Before, I think you had to buy this with the previous mice, but not anymore. So that just adds to the value of this mouse. But yeah, the steppings are from 125 all the way to 8,000. Another new feature they added is in-game polling rate. And this is auto switches now. So for example, I'm playing Warzone and I want to run at my maximum click latency. Now, provided your computer can handle this. Okay, mine can. Not everybody else's can, as a disclaimer. So if you have a high-end PC, then you should definitely run at the highest polling rate you can. And in my case, I do, to get the most optimum, the optimum click latency. Even though I might not be able to see it, I'm an older guy, so who knows? But some of you demons out there, you may notice it. So yeah, at 8,000, you get the lowest click latency, as you saw in my numbers. And so you can set that for your game. And then when you want to go back to the desktop, it'll auto switch back to 1,000, which is, battery saving, so that's good. Moving on, power. So yeah, you can set wireless power savings. You can set low power mode. Calibration. So smart tracking is basically, they have a new feature called asymmetric cutoff. That's where you can change your landing distance and your liftoff distance. It can be different, so it's asymmetric. I don't really care about all that stuff. I just keep it at medium and it works good for me. So yeah, you can change it from low, medium, and high, or set your asymmetric cutoff if you want to. There it is. So now you can see landing distance. So 13 for liftoff, 12 for this, or you can change it around however you want. Yeah, that's about it as far as Synapse goes. Now let's discuss pricing and value. Now I know a lot of people are turned off by the price because it's $159. I got mine for $141, by the way, from Amazon. I got lucky when they messed up with the price, but yeah, so a lot of people are turned off by the price and they're like, oh, I don't want to pay $159. What's Razer thinking? There's these Chinese mice that are $100 and they all have 8K. Well, you know what, guess what? Those Chinese mice have shit firmware. At least majority of them do. They just don't have good firmware. I mean, go do some wireless testing or click latency or whatever. Their firmware is trash. I mean, BSX is okay, but even their firmware, and they're a prominent Chinese, well, I mean, they're recent, but they're now a prominent Chinese manufacturer, and even their firmware is questionable. It's not that good. You've seen the wireless performance that I talked about in OG BSX. Now we'll see what the Fabulous Beast and the BSX Max have. They have a new provider now, but even the BSX Mini is having wireless issues. So again, that you buy these off brands at your own peril. Yeah, they're cheaper, but there's always a trade-off. They're not going to have as good coding, and many times the build quality, I mean, it leaves a lot to be desired. I know Razer, their reputation for build quality has been hit and miss, but I think they pretty much hit it out of the park with this thing. I mean, this thing is flawless. And I know I've said that about other mice, but I'm truly being adamant when I say this thing is flawless. I haven't really found any glaring defects in the build quality of this thing at all. So yeah, so that factors into the value of the mouse. In addition to that, they're giving you an 8K dongle now, and this used to be what, like $20 or something when you bought it separately. So you can factor that into the price. So you factor in 20, so then you're looking at like 139, 140 base price for the mouse. That's not bad, for an 8K mouse with top of the line sensor and really good click latency. I mean, you're getting a lot of value here. Synapse itself, a lot of people give it a hard time and they're all about web software, but come on guys, let's look at Final Mouse as the web software, right? It's bare bones. You look at Sora V2's web software, it's bare bones. And overall, they're pretty shit. They're not that good. Yeah, you don't have to install stuff on your computer, but I mean, Synapse is not that heavy memory, and it's not definitely not CPU memory. And I've always said this. I said it in my keyboard review for this thing, the Razer keyboard that I have, the Huntsman V3 Pro. I know there's I know there's Wooting and those other keyboards out there that have software, a web-based software, and people are making a big deal out of it. But honestly, I don't think it is. So in my opinion, you may not share the opinion with me. Synapse is a perfectly fine software. It does what it needs to do. It has a whole shit ton of features that you can utilize that these other softwares do not have. The interface looks decent. It's got a web-based login to where it'll save your profile. So anytime you reinstall your PC, you can log right into your profile and it'll download everything. It'll save all your profiles. I like it. I'm a fan of Synapse. It works fine for me. It doesn't give me any performance problems. Then again, I do have a decent PC. So maybe if you have a shit PC, it may not run as well. But then if you have a shit PC, maybe you should upgrade that instead of buying, $160 mouse. But yeah, no problems with Synapse. I think the software is solid. I think the value of this mouse, what it provides for $160 is good. I don't think it's overpriced at all. So yeah, moving on. What do I give this as far as the conclusion goes? Well, I think this is a new king of mice for now until BSX Max shows up. Let's see how that performs, shape-wise, performance-wise, and everything else. But for me personally, I think this mouse knocks it out of the park. It touches on everything that I want. It has perfect coating. The shape is perfect. I'm able to grip it nicely. Would I have liked it if it was like 10 grams lighter or 5 grams lighter? Sure, why not? I mean, I like lighter mice. So if it was 10 grams lighter, fucking hey, dude, this thing would be 11 out of 10, But for now, 9.5 out of 10. I just don't see any problems with this mouse at all. It's a damn solid mouse. Razer did a hell of a job. I think the value's fine. I think it's a way better mouse than Superlight 2 in every respect. In every respect. This thing has some pulling issues anyway at 4K. It doesn't do so hot at 4K. I know I haven't touched it in my reviews, but I think there might be other reviewers out there that check the wireless performance of this thing at 4K, and there's some issues with 4K in this mouse. At 2K, it's okay. I think Tech Power Up, if you look at their review, when they did 2K for the Superlight 2, the guy, he found some issues with it. But yeah, this thing, it works good, and the wireless pulling is good. Click latency is fantastic. Build quality is awesome. Dongles included, value is good. So yeah, 9.5 out of 10. And that's pretty much sums up my review. Thank you guys for joining me once again. And hopefully next week when the new Fabulous BSX review shows up, or the mouse shows up, I'll have a review for you guys a few days afterwards. And yeah, I'll bring some click latency, motion latency, and everything else to that review, just like I do for all my other reviews. Bye guys, thanks a lot, and have a good one.